Three, two.
Hi, this is Senator Adam Hollier, and this is the We Can Do Better podcast. I'm so excited to have a guest here who is not just here to talk about the work that she does, but also talk about how it really amplifies and elevates the voices of other women and people of color and people we don't typically hear from. And so one of the goals of the We Can Do Better podcast is to talk to people who are actually doing better, right? Who are committed to doing the work, who are committed to making a difference. And so I think Robin is one of those people, and I'm excited to share our platform and our voice and to hear from her and the work that she's doing. And so Robin, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you, how you got on this journey, and we'll just go from there.
Well, thank you so much for having me first, Senator Hollier. I always tell people when they say, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey. My family is the stereotypical Detroit family. My grandfather came up here from Alabama during the Great Migration for the Ford $5 a day, and soon sent from my grandmother and their siblings, and have worked for Ford. I've owned 6 Fords. I'm on my 6th Ford. Ford has
run them by me. What you got?
I started with Ford ZX2. Do you know what the ZX2? Do you remember that?
No.
Well, it's no longer in production. I've had them all. I've had the Escort. I'm in the Explorer now. I've had the Escape. I remember my mother had the Taurus. Mm-hmm. So we are a Ford family through and through. And growing up in the city, one thing that I recall is not only being a Ford family and having a lot of family members work at Ford in different positions, but also listening to Martha Jean the Queen. And mm-hmm. So if you're of a certain age, you remember Martha Jean the Queen as not only a broadcaster on the radio, but she also owned the radio station, which was unheard of during that time for a Black woman to own a radio station and lead her own show. And looking back, I believe that planted the seed for the work that I'm doing today, amplifying the voices of those that are underrepresented in broadcasting and podcasting. I'm also a mom of 3. And in addition to being a mom of 3, I've always loved working with and supporting small business owners. So before I even became an entrepreneur myself, I was a business consultant to a lot of businesses across the city. And one of my first jobs, I was an AmeriCorps intern, in fact, at a small nonprofit on the East Side, where I went door to door within our business community, asking them basically, what do you need? What can I help you with?
Which nonprofit?
Back then it was called the Jefferson East Business Association, now Jefferson East Inc.
I did AmeriCorps at JIBA.
Really?
In 2008?
2008? Oh yeah, I was gone by then. Let's see, 2004, like we just missed each other. But yeah, that was my first introduction to entrepreneurship, because I didn't know any entrepreneurs. I never looked at entrepreneurship as an industry that I was interested in or as an occupation, but I just knew I loved helping people realize their dreams. And I believe that has continued now even with the recording studio, so.
That's awesome. So your family kind of did the whole kind of Detroit thing, came up for Ford, but what kept you? I mean, so many families and so many people have decided to move out or to do different things. What kept you and even your work grounded in the city and in Detroiters?
Well, I did leave after graduating from high school. I left when I attended Michigan State, go Green.
MSU people can't help themselves.
I have to. I have to. It just rolls off the tongue. My first job.
world
You
of
don't want to go
political correct,
there.
I don't think
Let's
the
keep this
appropriate
friendly.
response should be go white. You know what I'm saying? So like maybe you guys need to refocus where you're at. Just stick with the go green. But the response might be
Oh,
time
go
out.
white. Okay. Well,
Yeah, you might.
that's what do you want us to do? I didn't pick the colors. I didn't pick the colors.
Just be done at go green,
Go
right?
green.
Like Michigan people can say go blue. They don't have to then say go gold because that's weird, right? Or go
But that's
maize.
our
Like
call
nobody.
and response. Let's leave it at that.
I'm just saying people have been doing a lot of things for a long time. Doesn't mean
That's
that you can't
true
do
that
better.
we can change it. All right. All
Yeah.
right. Fine. Okay.
Obviously, I'm from Michigan, so I'm just.
Oh,
teasing.
you're fine. Of course. I already do that.
Look at the walls. They're like
Right.
golden.
I was just going to say that. Look at the walls.
My wife picked them.
But
She's
you can't tell, but the color of my walls are very similar to that. It's just dark, kind of dark in here. But my first job out of college, I worked for the university in admissions. So I was a recruiter. I was an out-of-state recruiter. So I had the fun job of traveling I did the East Coast, I did Southern, and I did Chicago areas to recruit for the school, and loved it. I got homesick. That's really what brought me back to Detroit. I missed my family. I miss Detroit. Detroit is my home, and it'll always be my home. And so I came back to a different city than what I left. And
so when did you come back?
I came back in 2004.
Okay.
I want to say 2004. Yeah, I worked for the university just for a handful of years. And back then, if you worked for the university, you were able to attend graduate school for free. So that's another reason why I chose to stay, because you had to work there for X amount of years before that kicked in. And so I was able to get a graduate degree in higher education, nothing related to what I'm doing today, of course. But, and then I came back home and I loved it. I fell right back in love with Detroit and just found this passion of helping small business owners. Okay. Yeah. I wasn't going anywhere. Most of my family is still here. I'm one of, it's probably 5 generations of us still in the city of Detroit.
Okay. And so not only did you come back, but you planted roots. So you have 3 little munchkins running around there. Yes. How is that process been? What is it meant for you to be telling stories and amplifying the stories of people who look like you, look like us? We're gonna look like them.
Yeah, well, when I moved back, I was still very much in love with, you here see my son.
Yeah.
I was still very much in love with talk radio. And I bring in Martha Jean the Queen to the point where I would find old episodes of hers on YouTube and listen to them. And she just captivated me. But I could not find, besides Mildred Gaddis, who is also a legend, I couldn't find a lot of radio shows that were led by women talking about all issues and not just women's issues, where the woman wasn't a co-host, she wasn't talking about pop culture, but she was part of the discussion. I just could not find any. So I started the Motor City Woman radio show on Radio 1. And loved it. I love sitting down and talking to women from all different industries in the city of Detroit. But within a few months, I realized that there were more voices that needed to be heard than my own. And I just didn't know how to transition this one radio show into a platform. So I approached my husband, who's an audio engineer. And, with divine order, I went to him and I said, gosh, I would love to have a radio station. I don't even know what that would look like. And, he was able to not only point me in the right direction, but we found a local recording studio that allowed us to rent time by the hour, because I'm still working full time. He's working full time. With children, we didn't have a ton of money to invest in the business on the onset. So we just started where we were and evolved from there.
Okay. And so where are you at now? What's next? As you talk about this evolution, what are you doing? Tell us about the program. How do people tune in? What is the impact?
Well, the recording studio continues to evolve. We still have the digital radio station that broadcasts live. During, I would say, the last year or so, we started to see more people interested in podcasts. So a few years ago, our first podcasting client was out of state. And even now, we have clients across the country who are our podcast clients. So as the podcasting industry grew, we realized that there was a niche there that we could explore. And you hear my son, like I'm in his home. So I tell people, I'm not going to get mad at my kids for working because they don't come to my job and live. So it is what it is.
Everyone is dealing with different moments. And I think, honestly, as we talk about kind of your space and your mission to amplify the voices of women, I think a lot of men are coming to grapple with what it's more like having that kind of different role, right? Yeah. So I have 2 kids, and we have a 3-year-old girl and an 8-week-old son. And no matter how good a dad I am, I think I'm a fairly decent dad. Okay. The bar for being a dad is way lower than being a mom, right? So I'm a very good dad. I would be a very average mom, right? and like that, there is this change, right? So the expectation is when you are, that people look at a woman and they're like, well, oh, you couldn't get anybody to take care of your kids and do those kind of things. When Lily comes into the screen on the thing, all I get are, oh my God, she's so cute. I love her dad so much, like no one has ever, not one moment, been like, man, you don't want to. They're like, I'm glad you're spending time with that little person.
Right.
It's so good, I don't care if they're disruptive, right? Like I can take Lily to meetings, I can do all those kind of things. It doesn't make any difference. And, you compare that to some of the women who I serve with, and, we'll have block clubs in common, and I will have Lily and she will be with me, and people are like, oh, it's so amazing. And they will be talking stuff about, say, Senator Chang, and I'm just like, that's same thing. And they're like, that's not really the same thing, and so I think in this moment, people are starting to understand a little bit more and recognizing the need for grace in these kind of moments, in these situations. And so that's why it's so important for you to be giving women this platform and a space where they can be people and not just women, right? Like as you talk about women's issues of like, hey, there are lots of issues that are just issues, right? And many of the things that we call women's issues are children's issues, or childcare things, are things that dads should be just as involved in, that men should be just as involved in, but we have let it be pushed onto just you.
Right. And you bring up a couple of great points. And one in particular is how the pandemic has forced a lot of women out of the workforce, because unfortunately the school system is childcare for a lot of women. And now that the schools are closed, we're all at home, and then it's like everything layered on top of one another to bring all of these issues to the forefront that were already there. It's just we didn't have to force them, we didn't have to really look at them, and now it's forcing some conversations that need to be had when it comes to affordable childcare. And I remember coming home one day and there was someone running for elected office going door to door. And he came up to me and he said, what's the number one issue for you? And I said, I pay more in childcare than I do my mortgage. That's an issue. Issue.
Median cost in the state of Michigan is $9,980 or something. And that's pretty substantial. So if you took that directly out of somebody's paycheck, you said, all right, how much do you have to make for it to be worth that? Right? If you make 40 grand, okay, then you're paying probably 10 in taxes and all this kind of stuff. So you're taking home 30, you are then paying 9 to do the kid. And that's if you have cheap, like people always say, where do you
Right. You
find,
don't want, and who wants cheap childcare when you're dealing with your kids?
but it's like, where do you find that cheap childcare, right? Like there's always this discussion of like, well, I know that that's the number, but nobody's paying, like people
Right,
aren't
no one's
paying
paying
that.
that.
There are people who are paying that. Somebody's paying that. Some people are paying way less. Some people are paying way more. But when you run the numbers, there are a lot of people that are like, well, uh, I'm not making that much doing it. And then you layer on that women make less than men, and you start to say, well,
Right.
maybe she's not making 40, maybe she's making 30, and she's bringing home 22, and she's paying out 10, and then you
She's
include
just
gas and
working for
time.
childcare, basically.
Yeah.
You're just taking your paycheck and giving it to to childcare. That's, that's the reality. And I think if nothing else, when we were going into 2020, we were thinking, oh, 2020 vision. I saw these great marketing campaigns about 2020 vision. I was like, yes, we have 2020 vision. Everything became very clear, but not the way we thought.
I mean, I do think it put a lot of things in perspective for a lot of people, and unfortunately that caused, thousands of women to leave the workforce. But what you're doing, the work that you're doing, can in some ways give some of these ladies voices. It gives them a space to talk.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the program, what you do,
Sure.
how people get involved, how they listen? Like, what are you doing?
Sure. Well, right now we're focused more so on podcasting. Just because when the pandemic started and we shut down the studio for safety reasons, we were able to eventually reopen the studio on a limited basis. But we're finding that, a lot of people are interested more so in the podcast than live radio shows, which is fine. So because of that, we were able to create new services to support those people who wanted to launch a podcast. We started a digital course. So for someone who, you were at home and you were like, gosh, I've always wanted to start this podcast. I don't know where to start. I've looked at a ton of YouTube videos and all this stuff. So I sat down and recorded a ton of videos and how-to tutorials and launched a digital course. A few months later, we then created our a little show and tell here, our Motor City Woman Planner, which includes everything from templates and outlines and guides, and basically everything that I've learned with my years of experience working one-on-one with podcasters. What do you need to create a successful podcast, and not just podcast to be podcasting? There's a difference.
There is. It's an interesting balance of trying to find the right voice and the right format, and then tagging an audience and connecting. So
there's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot that goes into it. And I believe the mission of Motor City Woman is to make it as easy as possible for you to concentrate on the content and let us handle everything else. And I think that's the type of client that we've been attracting lately, people who have something to say. And I'm talking about, we have mental health professionals, we have authors, life coaches, people who want to reach a larger amount of people at once without having to be on social media all day, without having to spend a lot of money on Facebook ads. And the main thing that I love about podcasts is that it's direct to consumer. So there is no right now, and one of my predictions is that eventually there will be some sort of governmental authority when it comes to podcasts, similar to radio. That's my prediction. You heard it here first. Because anytime money is to be made, and as it grows in popularity, I think that will come to pass. But for right now, you can say something, upload it, and reach a global audience. And that's what's so exciting about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting platform. And as I kind of through pandemic, I have certainly, I don't want to say changed, but I'm listening to different things or watching different things, and found a couple more things because I was a kind of live TV. Like I like my fair amount of sitcoms, but nothing has been on. So I've
Right.
watched a lot more YouTube stuff of
Yeah.
people making their own content. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, primarily. I've been working my way through President. So I'm on George H.W. Bush. So
Nice.
I'm still optimistic that I'm going to get pretty close. I started with President Washington and have gone all the way. So in 2
Wow.
years. Yeah,
That's impressive.
I listen to things at double speed. I know it's insane, but
No,
I
I've
get
heard I've heard of people doing that.
yeah. But so as you talk about kind of this space for people who are like, hey, I want to get in, or they're looking for kind of these different voices, right? So when you are looking for a podcast, the ones that are produced by the people or kind of some of those more traditional media sources are the ones that pop up the quickest. How do people find your space? How are you able to amplify the work and the voices of those people you were talking about? I know it's always hard to find like that hyper local podcast, but we know they're out there.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, this brings me back to some of the work I did before becoming an entrepreneur, and that's all about community building. And I think a
Mhm.
lot of people want to skip that step. They want to go straight from, oh, I have this idea, to where are my fans? You have
Mhm.
to create the community first. And one of the things that I enjoy, and I think that we've been really good at over the last 5 years, is cultivating our community and
Mhm.
serving a community before you need them. A lot of people miss that part. They skip right over that part. And an example of that is, I remember when the Detroit Podcast Festival just started. And, I wanted to contribute anything I could because I saw there was a need there. And, I love the work that Ebony and Joy did with that. And now it's going into its fourth year. So that's a community, that's where you can find all the work that's being done right here in the Detroit area for podcasters by podcasters. So you have to find that community because it exists. It just takes more work than what I think a lot of people are willing to do.
So for maybe our listeners who are unfamiliar with that event, can you just tell us a little bit about it, what happens, how they could follow it or get connected?
Sure. It's actually, if you just Google Detroit Podcast Conference or Detroit Podcast Festival, both of
Mhm.
those, you should be able to look at, previous years. Like I said, it's a wealth of information. It brings in experienced podcasters, new podcasters. This year, of course, it was a virtual conference, and I was more than happy to participate. The leader, Ebony, did a fantastic job of pulling together a virtual conference that was engaging, that was entertaining, but also that was educational for people interested in podcasting. So that's the first step. Anytime I meet a podcaster here locally, I always say to plug into the Detroit Podcast Festival, because that's where you make all these networks and connections, and it can really even lead to having a podcast yourself or having a podcast that's sponsored by someone. So like WDET is involved. There's a lot of studios, a lot of local studios involved, including, Motor City Woman. So I think everyone should check that out.
Awesome. So what kind of advice do you have for folks who want to get into the space as you think about where Motor City Woman is going? Like, what if there is a young lady who is like, hey, I've always wanted to do this. I don't know if I want to be what I want to be when I grow up, but I've started to think about this sound engineering space. I know you've talked to, or, you're very involved in changing those demographics as well. So getting people from just on the front side of the camera, but doing the background work that's so important.
Well, and that was important to me, because when I got into the recording studio industry and I would go to different events, I was typically the only woman there, and definitely the only woman of color there. Like I recall going to it was an unveiling of this new stereo speaker system, and looking around, and I had my husband take a picture because I was the only woman in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, this is why we do what we do, because there are opportunities on the mic, but there are way more opportunities behind the mic.
Mm-hmm.
And to support that, a few years ago, we launched the Detroit chapter of Sound Girls. Sound Girls is a local nonprofit, a national nonprofit organization out of California that focuses on creating more women and girls in audio engineering. So when you think audio engineering, think of anything to do with sound. You could work on a film. Of course, you can work on things like podcasts and radio, but you can also work on documentaries. There's so many different types of media that you can be involved in. Live sound, concerts, live venues. So that's an area that we wanted to impact when it came to diversifying that space. And one of the things that we were working on during the pandemic is the launch of our second location in Detroit in Midtown. And that location is going to offer audio engineering classes.
Okay.
We're really excited about that because we wanted to offer something that's accessible and affordable to Detroiters to learn more about audio engineering. And then because we'll have the recording studio there as well, you'll be able to practice what you've just learned on real life customers.
Well, that's awesome.
I'm excited about it. Like, this year has been a year. And so we kept pushing forward, and, we're grateful to our local partners, Invest Detroit, Michigan Women Forward. I got to shout them all out because they really stepped up and supported this vision that we had to have this recording studio in Detroit, and Motor City Match. We were a Motor City Match award grantee as well.
So I think that's a really important caveat. As we talk about entrepreneurship, I think a lot of times there is this discussion that we miss how you go from, I have a great idea, to actually getting it on, live and up. And so you talked a lot about some of the content partners and the providers who help, you go from that idea to financing and business planning and like actually rolling. Can you just tell us a little bit about, who was the most helpful? How did that process go for you? And if you were going to give, you that advice when you moved back home 16 years ago, do this, go to this place first. These are the mistakes you don't need to make.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think when I came back to Detroit, we were at a pivotal time in the community. There weren't a ton of entrepreneur-related organizations like there are now. And I think the ones that initially come to my mind that really helped me was the Small Business Development Center, the SBA, and I remember when the Build Institute started, so engaging with these organizations that were fairly new at that time. I remember when Tech Town was just opening, and learning, those basic tenets of entrepreneurship from, business planning. And all those things are important, but when you ask, what were some of those things that I learned that, someone coming up now, what I would want to teach them or what to say to them? I remember my first boss when I was an AmeriCorps intern, one thing that she really instilled in me was the importance of how you treat people. And she would always say, people like to work with people who they like, good or bad. So in knowing this, be likable. I didn't say be fake. But be likable, be a giver before you ask to take something. Like, I don't like when someone sends me a Facebook DM asking me for something. I don't know you. That's just rude. Like, I don't, you know, I think the times of just cultivating a relationship. MJ, thank you. Cultivating I know that's.
I was gonna say, it's funny because I didn't work for Diana, but I know her through her advocacy, and she is one of those people who is just nice, right? And I don't mean nice in that kind of pejorative sense. It's like she's putting on this man.
No.
She's somebody who, smiling or not smiling, you're like, she cares, she's invested, like that genuineness is what I think you're talking about. And I think, especially in these kind of moments, that's something that really comes across where you're like, do they really mean what they're saying? How are they invested in this?
She was a gem. Miss Stewart was all that. She taught me so much, things that I learned right now, that I use right now, excuse me, that have helped my business grow. You know, when people say, you know, most small businesses don't last past 2 or 3 years, and we're going into our 6th year, it's because I understand the importance of how you treat people, customer service, and just, you know, those old school things of treating people how you want to be treated. That's all, you know. And I really learned that from her, you know, and just seeing her even keel tone where it takes a lot to rattle me. Like, I just don't get rattled, and I don't take anything personal. I learned those skills from Miss Stewart.
Well, that has got to have paid pretty good dividends in 2020, where it seems like at the moment someone says it can't get worse yet, the next thing is coming, and people are like, did you really have to say that? Did you knock on wood? Did you throw salt over your shoulder? Like, everybody's like, we can just make it through. Like, just another couple weeks. Just, you know. So what have you been doing during the pandemic for your own mental health? What has gotten you through these last almost 12 months?
I can't believe you saying 12 months was the first time I've heard it being said that's been that long, but it still rattles my mind. But I've been doing a lot. You know, one thing as a mother is I had to make sure that my cup stays full, which on the outside may look a little selfish, but I had to take care of myself, like even more so, because I'm with these kids 24/7 now.
Say that. I mean,
and I'm homeschooling.
Don't say that. If I could tell you the number of moms I know who are saying their hair is falling out, or they're pulling it out, or looking at their husbands very sideways, you are not alone in that regard. And so I certainly think that, you know, these last 8 or 9 days couldn't come fast enough. So we're very excited to get through them and get going. So I like to do physical activity. That is my way through. So, you know, are you exercising? Like, what's your stress builder? How are you staying after? How are you staying healthy?
I do a lot of things. So one thing, I love a nice soak. So I like to bathe, and I like to go all out with my salts and my candles. Honey, I turn the light, and this would be the middle of the day. I go in there and lock the door. I have my music on.
Okay.
And so that's one of my things. I love cross. Go ahead.
What's your go-to music? Now, if you're painting us a picture, tell us what we're listening to.
Okay, what you're listening to right now. I'm going to put you guys on to somebody.
Okay.
His name is Masego.
Okay.
Masego. Like, so relaxing.
His name sounds relaxing.
I think he's out of the UK.
Okay.
I think he's out of the UK. So that it's a whole mood.
Okay.
And so that's one of the things that I like to do. I love crossword puzzles. Crossword puzzles are very relaxing to me. And I have one of these large print ones. So I don't, so I can put the phone down and just be within my puzzle and loving it. And then I love exotic teas.
Okay. Like what kinds?
There's this tea is at the bottom, Stephanie, of the active house. There's a tea, and it's um, ashwagandha, and that's a yoga
Okay.
pose. But there is a tea I found, and it says on the bottle, calm and clarity.
Okay.
So I'll put that on with my diffuser.
Mm.
Yeah, I usually have the diffuser going in the house as well. I know.
Sounds like out here. I mean, sounds like a very peaceful place. Like there's not that much zen going on in my house. We are rocking and rolling.
I have a lot going on. Yeah, so I try to, no, I don't try to. I create a space that is relaxing to me,
Okay.
because I can control this space.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what has helped me. And I'm hoping other moms and parents at home that are juggling work and school, and we're still in a pandemic and there's a lot going on, that you control your space. So you may want to declutter. Clutter brings about stress. So get all that stuff. If you haven't worn in the last year, get all that stuff out of there. That's all energy. Get all that dead energy out of there. So that has helped me, is concentrating on what I can control and releasing everything else.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and
Thank
joining
you.
us. Would you tell everybody how they can get in touch with you if they want to tune in, listen to the station, and they were like, hey, I've always wanted to podcast. Now I know how, or, how do people get connected to you, Robin?
Sure. Well, thank you again for having me. And thank you for the work that you are doing for the Michigan citizens. A couple of ways. We're on all social media platforms at Motor City Woman. If you're interested in our audio engineering classes in our Detroit studio, it's going to be right in the Wayne State Midtown area. You can visit audioengineersofdetroit.com. Mm-hmm. Or you can go to motorcitywoman.com for our podcast services. That's also where you'll find the link for our digital course and our podcast planner on motorcitywoman.com, and get engaged with our newsletter on Motor City Woman as well.
Awesome. Well, Robin, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you and to listen to you, and for you to share, some moments with us, and, let us meet the kids, because
I know
that's the new everything, right? Like everyone is all shut in their houses. They're like trying to close doors, and you're like, can the kids open doors? It's like that moment in Jurassic Park where they're like, the Velociraptor can open the doors. You're like, oh no, I'm not safe.
I remember that. Did you see the doorknob moving?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I remember the first day Lily could open doors, and it's like, the world will never be the same.
Nope.
It'll never be the same. But
I'll just let you know, we've taken all the candy canes off the tree because the 4-year-old, we thought, oh, he can't reach that. Homeboy got a chair.
Yeah.
And stripped the tree. So I said, okay, I guess we're done with candy canes.
Hey, it'd be like that. So that they know how to adapt. And that's what 2020 has all been about, right? It's been about adapting and trying to find a way to make it to the next day and to the next year. So Robin, I'm super excited to have had you. Thank you so much. Robin Kinney from Motor City Woman, check her out.
Thank you.
And this is the We Can Do Better podcast, where we talk to interesting and amazing people who are doing really great work in the 2nd Senate District that affects the state of Michigan, and just generally people that you need to know because they're doing the work to make our lives better. Thanks.
Thank you.